Trump economic policy. Some people think is very genius, some people think is very dumb. Regardless, this policy will influence us in the long term. However, when I'm going online to see a variety of analysis, people are very biased. Sometimes they pick in two completely opposite rivalry economic theory to prove their own point. Does it actually do more good in the long term for the countries? And today, I want to make a fictional debate between several most famous economists in the history to debate on what's their own understanding of Trump using their own school of thoughts. Maybe in the end, we will have a clear vision and you also will have a better understanding how will those policies influencing you. The economists are going to join the debate are Hayek, the Nobel Prize winner for 1974 for economic contributions, and he is representative of Austrian school of thought of economy. Keynes, he is the founding father of macroeconomic, and the word macroeconomic is even created by him. Third, Alexander Hamilton, the founding father, make America into one of the biggest economy in the world by anti-economic theories. Fourth one is a group economist that is very strange to most people, named communist economist. And I'm not talking about like Lenin, Stalin, all those political figures. I'm talking about purely economic. The reason why I want to bring the last one as a little Easter egg is because the people Trump's supporters are very similar to the communist economist supporters, the labor worker, and they have a similar view, and the approach they're doing are extremely similar to what Trump is doing. So I think it's very funny to editing. And let's go through one by one. First, Hayek. His idea is basically taken over from Adam Smith, free market. In the academic field, most people don't even think Hayek is an economist. And he himself even admits that he has some development on political and philosophy. And that's why he actually become one of the face of how America economic work since Reagan as a president. So, what makes him different, like free market, why his free market theory are so different, is because he believed that in order to build a man-made order or system or intervention from the government, you need to use your rationale. You need to use your human intelligence. But human intelligence has a limitation. Means if man-made order was made, there always will be flawed and a create problem, sometimes is devastating problem. One of the famous example is when British still colonizing India, they try to eliminate the snake within cities, and they are giving rewards for whoever catching the poison snakes. Slowly, they find that there is more and more poison snake everywhere within the cities. Later on, they realize that people start breeding and growing their own farm of snake so they can turn those snake in to exchange for the rewards. They build a system to eliminate the snake, but that reward actually create more problems. And that is a small incident of what artificial or man-made order. So what does a spontaneous order look like in his opinion? He mentioned that in the wild, you always see this random track within the forest, even in the places there's no human exhibit. Why? It's because animals are choosing wherever they want to walk. When there's a loss of animal choosing this path to walk, it suddenly creates a path within the forest. And the path is created by spontaneous order or people's will, animals' will, whatever. For the longest time, within academic, he's actually not well received, and none of the government willing to take his approach to manage their own country. Because when he was born, 1899, At that moment, the biggest booming of economy is actually Germany. And he said, Germany, despite they have a very fast growing economic, they will create big problem because man-made order. Then, Nazi emerged. After the establishment of USSR, people see one of the fastest growing from agriculture to one of the biggest industrial zone of the world. Everyone thinking USSR's approach is correct because look how much GDP they grow, look how fast they transform from agriculture to industrial zone. But he said no. They will 100% have a problem. And his prediction become right. So if we're looking back nowadays, using his theory to look at Trump's policy, what would he say? He will think Trump into the same fashion like how he used to look at Nazis and USSR. They are trying to using the man-made order to pushing economy boom. But in future, it will 100% causing some problems. But of course, the base idea is because tariff or even he have an anti-union point of view, he believed that those will eliminate the option of people and he will 100% kill the democratic country and the politics. And later on, his theory actually been turned into called neo-libertarianism and become a political theory that perfectly fuse political power with capitalist. And that is beyond the scope of this video because I purely want to focus on the economic stand of those economists, but not the political impact. So that's his idea. The second person we want to mention, Keynes. He is one of the biggest rivalry of our first economist, Hayek. He hold a completely different point of view, and his idea was even implemented until today. Federal Reserve is one of the classic representative of Keynes' idea. And he is the main reason why no one even liked Hayek to begin with in the academic field. So, what is Keynes' belief? When Keynes first time read the book that written by Hayek called The Road to Serfdom, the book that earned Hayek a Nobel Prize, all he does, leave a note, says, Hayek, you are a very, very great philosopher, but you know nothing about economic. He thinks that Hayek is way too naive. In theory, in the perfect situation, free market work, but we are not in a perfect situations. Do you think UK used to be the richest country in the world because they have a great free market policy or because they colonize all the country that they see? He believed that Hayek is like physicist. They create physics theory in the perfect situation when there's no air, no gravity, no frictions. But it's not really applicable to real life. He also believed free market, the invisible hand, but he believed there's a second hand is more important, which is government interventions. How could you say government intervention is not powerful enough to influence our markets? So what would he think about Trump's policy? Actually, he specifically mentioned tariff and trade deficit in his own writing. He mentioned that when trade deficits happen within a country, it will actually kill a country's economy. What is his theory? Why would he think that? Because for one main reason, when you have too much trade deficit, money is flowing to the foreign markets. The foreign markets, either the government or the individual people who earn, let's say, US dollar, they cannot spend the US dollar in locally. So what would they do? They will return to US, buying factory, buying real estate, buying everything they see. And slowly, the country's main economic pillars is no longer belong to the nation's citizens. It's belong to a foreign country, especially key resources like coal, oils, electronics. So you may think that he is supporting Trump's theory, but in reality is no, because there is a historical problems. Keynes passed away 2 years before Nobel Prize was even established. He will never predict that in year of 2000 something, we have a thing called Federal Reserve. And when they hike the rate, let's say 1%, 2%, will bring all the dollar from the foreign market back to US. He will also not predict how Federal Reserve using market to even print monies. So if his main concern of foreigner using dollar to come back to US buying the main property is cancelled, he may not even supporting Trump's theory. However, here I just want to branch out a little bit beyond his own theory, that back to the 80s, Trump is actually himself witness what Keynes predict. Trump himself is a real estate developer. He mainly stayed in New York. And he probably still remember when Japanese company, Mitsubishi Group, come in to US Fifth Avenue, buying the whole Rockefeller Group, include Rockefeller Center in the Fifth Avenue, the shock hit on his face. But also I have to mention, back to 1980s, the power of Federal Reserve is not as strong as today, and the economic financial industry is not as developed. To explain why back to the 80s is so different than 2020 is probably another video, and why how does money flow back, how Federal Reserve print money is not actually cash. It deserves another separate videos. And he also disagree on one other point. He think if a government using tariff for their own political benefits, it will create devastating results. For example, you try to win some votes, so you do tariff. You try to show your soft power, so you use tariff. That will create problem within a nation even. And it will leave to you to judge, is Trump actually using tariff for his own political stance? Let's go to the third person that have a significant influence of the world economic. Is actually Alexander Hamilton. He is one of the founding fathers of United States. Why he is so famous? For solely one reason is his theory make America become globally top biggest economy in the world. Back then, when UK is still the number one biggest economy in the world, have a colonization everywhere, they have one of the famous economists named David Ricardo. He is the one who created competitive advantage theory. If anybody who go study Econ 101 in your college, that's probably the first couple of things you learn besides supply and demand. Even until today, most, if not all economists believe in comparative advantage theory, that your own country should do what you do the best, and we all trade and we all have a better GDP overall. But the person who don't agree is actually Hamilton. His theory called infant industry theory. In the history context, back then UK was the biggest industrialization country, and they made the industrialization to the peak. If we open our market and do not add tariff and protectionism, US will never grow as big industrializations, and we will never compete with UK because their price is cheaper, labor is cheaper, everything is better. So we need to protect our own country. And the country that doing the same and believe in Hamilton is actually Germany. And fast forward today, we will know. Because that protectionism for the infant industry that make US and Germany become the top economy in the world. But of course, Germany, because they have a strong power, it creates World War I, World War II, and more problems. Back to Trump's policy. If you let Hamilton travel to today, he will also believe adding tariff, specifically on industrialization of U.S., is important. The person who suggests this point of view to Trump is actually in his cabinet, a professor from Harvard named Navarro. In his new book, User Manual of Restructuring Global Order, I believe that's the name, don't call me quote unquote, but in the book he mentioned America lack of manufacturers or factories, it will cause problem for US long term. If one day, imagine one day that World War III start, whoever is fighting with us, America will hesitate to even stand up for themselves because the factory manufacture is dependent on other country. We don't mention that the world is moving fast forward and there is more and more competition, more and more threat that US cannot just rely on Silicon Valley and Wall Street. We need to have our own independent manufacturer. Otherwise, we will lose the edge as the number one. What do you think about this school of thoughts? Leave comment down below, and I will not leave a political stand for this. And let's go to the last one. Communist economist. I'm not talking about the politics communist economist. I'm not talking about revolution. I'm not talking about union. I'm not talking about none of those. Their stand is very clear that the reason why a lot of people are struggling in the US is not because other countries, working class, make us suffer. Because they get paid lower, so my pay is lower. No, the reason why America's working class have problem because Silicon Valley, because Wall Street, because capitalists from other countries. Most people know of the theory exploitations because it's great to pass on the information. But the true economic reasoning that no one even heard of. Why capitalism is a problem in the economic theory is this. A lot of people, let's imagine, you making iPhone as a worker. You, within a bigger picture, you are a producer of this product, but in the same time, you are a consumer. If you don't get paid a lot, means you don't buy a lot, means other factory owner don't earn as much money, means someone will lose job, means less purchasing power, means depressions overall circulating in the markets. This means if a capitalist or a factory owner earn more money, means there will be less consumer in the market, and indirectly causing depressions and making everyone losing jobs. Back to Trump's stance. Trump's supporters from the profiles is actually aiming the same group of people that communists try to aim. The working class, the blue collar, manufacturer, and families. So what would Karl Marx think about Trump? Trump decided to add tariff. Who are he damaging? Whose benefit will lose? The answer is foreign market capitalist and local market capitalist. Because smaller factory owner or the worker, they have to pay higher product price, but it also make the bigger player stop growing even bigger. They cannot have access to the global markets, so they will not become even bigger, more profitable, bigger companies. So on that point, we don't mention the violent revolutions of communist ideology. Trump's behavior and his supporter is actually in profile of the communists, which is very interesting, in my opinion. And I just want to leave it here for you to have a little piece of pie to think about. Despite Trump criticized the ideology on political level, but the economic level, they are actually in the same route. And that's overall 4 most famous school of thoughts in economics that maybe help you to have a clear vision of what is going on and how should you navigate your future based on this blueprint. And please let me know who you agree more, or do you have even a more different idea of these 4 economists? Please comment down below. And I hope you learned something today. My name is Paul. I will see you next time. Bye.